The ACC Championship game is set. Two teams with one goal trying to take home that trophy and secure a spot in the college football playoff. The SMU Mustangs have been the most dominant team in the conference all season long, and Clemson is the team that has dominated this conference for the last decade. In a matchup with two teams with two very different styles of play, how is this one going to play out, and which team is going to come out on top, securing a spot in the 12-team playoff? That's what we're going to be talking about in today's video, and this is a really interesting matchup that I'm really excited to dive into because they're two teams that, as we mentioned, are very different in a lot of different ways, but I think this game could end up being a classic in the ACC, and it's a bit of a old versus new. SMU, a newcomer to this conference this year, joining from the American, and Clemson is a team that has run this conference for basically the last 10 years. How are things going to play out? And I'm excited to get into it. If you guys do want more of these conference championship college football playoff previews, ring that notification bell. We're going to be talking about all of it throughout the next few weeks as the bowl season starts heating up. But let's kick this video off and start with SMU because this is a team that joined the ACC via conference realignment. This is one that really confused people, where all the moves that the ACC made to add teams. The Atlantic Coast Conference added SMU from Dallas, they added Stanford, they added Cal, and it just felt very random, and none of those teams exactly belong on the Atlantic Coast. But it has proven to be a very good move for SMU, and they are proving that they can be a real legitimate threat moving forward in the ACC. Early on in the season, things didn't look this way. They won a very tight one against Nevada in Week 0, which was expected to be a blowout win for them, and then they lost to BYU in Week 2, which at the time people thought was an awful loss for this team, and in hindsight, it's really not that bad of a loss. In Week 4, however, is when things really flipped for this SMU team, when head coach Rhett Lashlee benched quarterback Preston Stone in favor of the young Kevin Jennings, and that move has worked out incredibly for the Mustangs. Jennings is having an overall pretty solid season with 2,533 yards, 17 touchdowns, and has an adjusted completion percentage of 75.1. All of that has been great, but the whole identity of this SMU team changed. Preston Stone was viewed as a gunslinger type of quarterback, an all-or-nothing type player who had an incredible arm and took a lot of deep shots, but Jennings is a bit interesting. Yes, he has that elite arm talent that Stone has, and he might even have a better arm, but Jennings is best utilized in the ground game. The offense has opened up a ton, utilizing the mobility of Jennings, and it has led to not only Jennings thriving, but running back Brashard Smith. Smith has been on a complete tear these last few weeks, running over 115 yards 3 times in the last 4 games, and has 13 touchdowns on the season. I think the biggest concern you have with the offense is going to be the turnovers. The Duke game was a disaster for SMU when Jennings threw 3 interceptions and fumbled the ball 4 times. Ball security has been an issue all year for Jennings, and turnovers in the ACC Championship game will not go over well. Luckily, on the other side of the ball, they have a defense that is top 10 in all of college football. This team has athletes on the defensive side of the ball. Elijah Roberts is tied for second in the FBS with 54 total pressures, and he makes a huge difference in the run game as well. This team has 182 run stops on the season, which are tackles for loss or no gain in the run game, and they can shut down the run early and often. SMU has had an awesome season really from the start. They have some difference makers on the offensive side, but this is a team that if they're going to win, they're going to need help from their defense to show up in a big way. And I believe that if they can do that, in their first season in the ACC, they could go out as champions. But they won't have an easy task because Clemson is a team that is in the ACC Championship yet again, but this year feels a lot different than it has in years prior. This is a Tigers team that has been one of the most hot and cold teams in all of college football. After getting completely embarrassed against Georgia in Week 1, This Tigers team really turned their season around and went on a super nice run early in the year, beating a lot of their conference opponents. But over the last month or so, this Clemson team has lost 2 of its last 5 games, including losing earlier against South Carolina, and they just haven't been that dominant Clemson team that we have been accustomed to seeing. I'm not going to go on a full rant about why I think Dabo Swinney has done a poor job adapting to this new era of college football, because I've done that already, and it's proven to be true. With all that said, it hasn't been a bad season for the Tigers. I think a big talking point all year, especially after the loss to South Carolina, people are going to talk about how disappointing of a year it's been for Clemson, and I don't think it's been as bad as people think. Cade Klubnik has been really incredible all season for Clemson. What he brings to this Tigers offense as both a runner and a passer has been incredible all season long. He doesn't turn the football over or put the ball in harm's way very often and has been incredibly accurate all year round. This Clemson team has weapons. Phil Maffa and Antonio Williams have been huge pieces for this team, but this is a team that is going to win because of their defense. Their defensive line is loaded with 2 studs up front. TJ Parker and Peter Woods are 2 players who have dominated opposing teams all season long, and they have been wreaking havoc on opposing quarterbacks. They have 14 combined sacks, and they've been awesome. But they also have a really good secondary. Avion Terrell and RJ Mickens have been flying around and making plays on the back end for this team. And this is a team that I think can create pressure, force turnovers, and make big plays when they need it most. If they win this game, it will be because of a big day from the defensive side of the ball, and because they were able to force Jennings off his timing. Kevin Jennings is a good quarterback, but turnovers have been his issue all season long. He's put the ball on the ground a lot in the fumbling game, but he's also thrown interceptions. We mentioned that Duke game, and Duke is a team that really likes to bring pressure. I think Clemson could bring pressure in this game. I think they've got players that you can blitz and you can force Jennings to get the ball out of his hands quickly and hope that he turns the football over. Ultimately, though, I do think that the defensive line for SMU could be a big challenge for Clemson. We mentioned Elijah Roberts, but they've also gotten incredible play from Jared Harrison Hunt on the interior, who's been an incredible run stopper for them all season long. I really like both of these matchups, and it's going to be interesting. I think SMU is going to want to run the football with Brashard Smith, and I think they can do that against this Clemson team. They've got a good pass rush, but you saw it last week against South Carolina. This is a team that really struggled to stop the run. Lenora Sellers had a big game as a quarterback in the run game, and Raheem Sanders had big game-changing plays. The secondary is strong for Clemson, but how often is Kevin Jennings going to get into his drop-back passing? If it does get to that situation, I think it favors Clemson because SMU is out their top weapon in RJ Maryland, and they have been for about a month and a half now. It's going to be a really interesting matchup. Clemson has weapons, and I think they can make plays happen, but I'm not betting against this SMU team, and I think they're going to win in a pretty favorable outcome. I'm going to say a 21-31 win for SMU. I think they've got a defense that's really strong and is flying under the radar all season long. And I think Kevin Jennings has been a huge difference maker for this team, and they've really flipped a switch over the last month and a half and have really started to figure things out. This is going to be a really interesting matchup, and it's going to be really interesting to see how the coaching all plays out. But I do believe that SMU, in their first year in the ACC, is going to come out on top and take home that trophy and get themselves into the playoffs.